All right. Good morning. Welcome to Columbus KTC. My name is Justin Fitch, and I'm one of the teachers who teaches the intro classes, the Intro to Buddhism and Intro to Meditation classes. Today, Lama Kathy had let me know that the senior meditation instructors and lamas weren't available to give the Dharma talk today. So she asked if I would present the intro class that normally I'd be presenting in the classroom downstairs, if I would present the intro class up here. So hopefully that's okay with you. We're all gonna go back, and it's class 1, so it's kind of perfect timing to have class 1 up here today. We do have an outline that we normally hand out. Maybe what I thought maybe is if you haven't taken class 1 or you were here to attend the intro class, if you could raise your hand, and Michael's gonna come around with the outline. So we'll just patiently let that happen. And then if there are any outlines left over after we make sure the newcomers get a copy, then we'll put them available in the back for anyone to have. And then likewise, all of our handouts to our intro classes are available on our website, thanks to Kevin Dwinell. So if you just go to columbusktc.org, resources and library, all of the handouts for our intro classes are there. So if you haven't happened to take the intro classes, there's some really great materials there that you could check out. Okay, well, our first intro class, class 1, is called the 3 Jewels. And so I'm gonna present this to you. I reviewed it with Lama Kathy this week, and we'll just do my best for you. And then hopefully we'll have time for some question and discussion. Okay, so the subject is the 3 jewels. When we use the expression the 3 jewels, we're using words of preciousness and rarity to refer to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. These are elements that are central to the Buddhist tradition. The 3 jewels describe our potential, our Buddha nature, the path of spiritual transformation, which is the Dharma, and then how we relate to the path, the Sangha. So the first of the 3 jewels is the Buddha. The word Buddha in Sanskrit means awake or awakened one. In one context, this word refers to the Buddha of this era, which was Siddhartha Gautama, the prince of the Shakya clan, who was born 2,500 years ago in what was then northern India. He became known as Shakyamuni Buddha because he awakened from a state of ignorance and realized his true nature. By this, we mean he purified all mental afflictions, anger, attachment, ignorance, and all the rest. And he fully realized his innate qualities of awareness, compassion, and wisdom. But in the context of today's class, first at least, the word Buddha is going to refer to the innate qualities themselves, which all of us have within us. These qualities exist within us as our potential, which we call our Buddha nature. So I'm gonna continue here, but in this class, we talk about the Buddha both as the Buddha Shakyamuni and the Buddha, our Vajradhara Buddha, which was recently installed as the first jewel, as as the being we would take refuge in and take guidance from. And I'll talk more about that towards the end. But in this class, we also talk about the first jewel of the Buddha as our own Buddha nature also. So not just the Buddha that we follow, but the Buddha within us. So it's said that we all have Buddha nature, but that it's obscured or hidden. So first I'm gonna share about, well, what is it that keeps us disconnected from that inner Buddha, that inner Buddha nature? And then, maybe then we follow the second jewel of the Dharma with support of the Sangha to clear away those obscurations and let that inner Buddha come through. So our Buddha nature is said to be temporarily hidden by 4 obscurations known as the 4 veils. So the 4 veils are ignorance, conceptual knowledge, the basic propensity for dualistic clinging, afflictive emotions, and then habitual patterns. The first veil of ignorance means that we're ignorant of our true nature. Our true nature is too much for us. We're overwhelmed by it. And so in reaction, we create and cling to the concept of I or me. The second veil, or conceptual knowledge, comes out of the I or me that we've created. Once we have this I or self, then we have you, them, and we have this dualistic thing going on. And so once we have that, there's inevitable friction between the self and the other. This cognition of an I or self and the resulting friction then leads to what we call the 3 poisons. These are the 3 ways that we react to everything. The 3 poisons are attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Attachment means when we like something and we want to have it. Aversion is when we don't like and we don't want that. Okay. And then ignorance means we think that whatever it is has nothing to do with us, and so we just simply ignore it. So the 3 poisons lead to the third veil that obscures our Buddha nature, which are our afflictive emotions. So the afflictive emotions are anger, greed, ignorance, desire, jealousy, pride. Finally, these afflictive emotions, eventually they become patterns, habitual patterns for us. And these patterns result in, or are the 4th veil, the veil of habitual patterns, or the veil of karma. So we kind of come to identify with our afflictive emotions and our habitual emotional patterns. So our Buddha nature is obscured by these 4 veils. However, according to the teachings, these negativities are merely temporary and insubstantial appearances. And through Buddhist study and practice, we can abandon, transform, and transcend the veils, and transcend, abandon, transform our negative habitual patterns. And we do this by working with our minds, using the practice of meditation and other practices. So as we practice meditation and our other practices we offer here, our Buddha nature becomes more apparent to us and more a part of how we go through our day and how we think of ourselves, rather than our afflictive emotional patterns. So in the context of the 3 jewels, our Buddha nature is considered the basis or the ground of the Buddhist path. It's not something we create, and it's not something we obtain from outside of us. It's something we realize from within us by reading, thinking, talking about it. And Buddha nature then is revealed by Dharma practice and study. And so that's a brief discussion of the first jewel of the Buddha. So we can both, I'll circle back later and talk about the Buddha as the Buddha, but the first point here was recognizing the first jewel as the Buddha within us, our Buddha nature. Being aware that we all have it, but there are these veils obscuring our connection with it. And this brings us to our second jewel, Dharma. In studying and practice the Dharma, we can clear away the obscurations and get in touch with the Buddha within us. Thanks, sorry. I had my screen, so it was kind of like smashing my language, so it was appearing oddly, but I fixed it now. Okay. All right, so our second jewel, our second precious jewel is the Dharma. So the word Dharma refers to the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings are the instructions on working skillfully with ourselves. In general, we can divide the teachings into two types. First, we have what is known in Tibetan as lung, or the Dharma of Scripture. These are the teachings that we listen to, contemplate, and meditate on. The second type of Dharma is known in Tibetan as Tokpa, or the Dharma of realization. This refers to our actual experience, the experience that results from practicing the Dharma. So Buddha Dharma as a whole entails both the teachings themselves and the realization of those teachings. And I think today we have the representation of the Dharma over here with our scriptures here. You could also consider, for example, I brought Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's Dharma paths with me today. You know, this would be an example of Dharma. We have our wonderful library downstairs with many Dharma books. So in other words, following the path of Dharma should not just be an intellectual exercise. Hearing and contemplating the teachings will only take us so far. We also need the realization that comes from practice. Now, we said earlier that the Buddha or Buddha nature, the first jewel, provides the basis or the ground for the path of Buddhism. Here in discussing the Dharma, we see that the Dharma comprises both study and meditation practice, and it's the path itself on the ground. So what are the elements of the Dharma path? There are three essential elements on the path. The first is hearing. This means the teachings must be heard and understood through talks given by qualified teachers and advanced students, and used through the use of selected study materials. We should be able to trace the content of the teachings to the words of the Buddha and to realize Buddhist teachers in history. Hearing teachings in this way is said to be like receiving a map that's showing the path. The second essential element of the path is contemplating. This means we have to relate to what we've understood. We have to relate it to our own personal experience. We have to ask whether what we've heard is true. We don't take anything on blind faith. We examine, question, and digest the Dharma teachings that we receive. This process of contemplating is said to be like studying the map that you were given. And then the third essential element of taking in the Dharma is applying it, is practicing it. We realize the teachings by applying the approaches to meditation and conduct that our teacher presents. This is said to be like actually traveling the path, following the map to our destination. So when we follow the path, we pursue a graduated approach to study and practice that comes from an authentic teacher within an authentic lineage. So that's a brief discussion of the second jewel of the Dharma. The third jewel is the Sangha. In the context of this class, the Sangha refers to us, the community of student practitioners who practice and support the Dharma. But we also, in talking about the three jewels, would think of the Sangha as the community of enlightened beings. So our representation of the Sangha is really all over with all the different deities that we have represented here on either side of Vajradhara. So we've kind of had these dualistic things where the first jewel is both the Buddha as well as the Buddha within us. The second jewel is the Dharma as well as our practice of it. And then the third jewel is the Sangha as well as us who are practicing. An essential point here is that the Sangha not only follows the teachings, but makes available the teacher and the teachings. So our Sangha does this by providing a center, hosting teachers, and other programs. So we are a wonderful Sangha here. I'll take a moment to just expand a little bit on the Sangha. We have obviously our Sunday morning programs with Intro to Meditation, Intro to Buddhism, Dharma Talk, Open Meditation, Tara practice, KTC Kids. But we also frequently have Saturday workshops on various practices. We are blessed to often have guest teachers from our home monastery of KTD. So our Sangha here, provides a lot and is a rich and valuable third jewel for us. So we said earlier that the Buddha is the ground of the path, the Dharma is the path itself, and so we can say that the Sangha is the fruition of the path. So that's a brief overview of the three jewels. I have a couple more things to share that I talked with Lama Kathy about, and then we'll open it up to discussion and questions, maybe reflections you have on your experience of the three jewels, or questions you have. So to kind of conclude that brief presentation, again, this is the intro class. First is that each of us, no matter who we are or what our situation might be, has potential to realize our true nature, our Buddha nature, the first jewel. Second, there is a gradual path that we can follow that has already been traveled by others, and we're fortunate to have a record of this path through the Dharma teachings. Third, as we're traveling the path, we have companions, both as guides who we take refuge in, and fellow practitioners who we can discuss our experiences on the path with. And so we're here to help each other make this journey possible. All right, let me take a look here. What I did is I went through the teaching and kind of sent Lama Kathy some questions. And so I want to just make sure I share a few of her thoughts that she shared. Okay, so maybe this didn't stick out to you guys the way it does to me, but in the first part, when I was talking about the first jewel of the Buddha and our Buddha nature, and talking about the veils, it said that we're overwhelmed by our true nature, and so we create an I or a self. And so I just shared with her, I said that there's not a self. That's pretty deep for intro class 1. So do you have any suggestions? So she did. So I wanted to share what she had to say about that. I think it's really powerful, the explanation that's given. I think particularly today, I feel like I'm bombarded with these people, those people, others, this, us, that, and we're seeing the conflicts between self and other kind of exploding, all around us. But, if I'm not me here giving the intro class in the shrine room for the first time, then who am I or what's going on? So anyway, here's what she said, Lama Kathy. The Buddha taught that our minds are limitless. Mind doesn't have a shape or form or beginning or end, but that our minds are not nothingness because mind can experience and know the world and know itself. But that's not how we experience ourselves right now. Right now, when we experience thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on, we think that all those things are solid, real, permanent, and unchanging, and that they come from a me or I that is likewise solid, real, permanent, and unchanging. That is our first mistake, not recognizing our true nature. In reaction, we cling, we cling to things. She goes on to say, the Buddha didn't say we didn't have a self. We obviously have one, but the self is not what we think it is. The Buddha taught on 2 levels simultaneously. He taught relative truth, or the truth of how things appear, and then ultimate truth, the truth of how things really are. Relatively, we appear to have a self, but that self ultimately isn't what we think it is. It is much more. So hopefully that gives you some additional insights to think about with regards to the veils and our creation of a self and our Buddha nature. So that's really it as far as the script and presentation for the first class. I think we want to introduce newcomers to the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Now maybe I'd open it up. Maybe the question is, I have some things I could share about different ways I experienced the first jewel of the Buddha, the second jewel of the Dharma, the third jewel of the Sangha. But maybe different participants here would want to share, when you think of the 3 jewels, what do you think of? What's your experience of that? Maybe for those of you who have been around for a while, you could share different teachings you've heard or advice or instruction you've been given with regards to the Buddha, with regards to the Dharma or the Sangha. So I'd love to open it up to a discussion and just see what people have to say about the 3 jewels. So I think we have these microphones at the side that you could use.
I want to talk for a minute about my favorite topic, which is karma. My understanding of karma is that it's the law of cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that exactly in your presentation, so kind of takes on the negative side of karma. But karma has a very positive side too. All the good things that we receive is a result of good things that we've done. So.
Okay, so you're referring to the part of where I was talking about the fourth veil of how our habitual patterns kind of become karma. Okay. And you're saying, well, there's not only like karma that's a veil that's negative, but there's karma that's good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
The Buddha doesn't talk about karma in a negative way. He just talks about karma as the process by which the shadow follows us around, or the cart follows the oxen around.
Yeah. I think that's above my pay grade.
What?
I have like a thought. Let me think if I can share my thought. I guess, or I have a question. I'm wondering if, like, could we become attached to our good karma? Or, like, could we become attached to feeling, I don't know, like, I did this and it benefited others. And, surely, and maybe we do just, maybe that was good karma that we created through a positive, beneficial action. Is it possible we could like fall into a thing where we kind of like obsess over that, or kind of pursuing getting good karma, and does that take us away from like kind of a self that's free from attachment and an aversion, like to become attached to? I don't know. Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't do things that cause good karma. I'm wondering, like, I don't know, is that a way that a pursuit of something we think is good becomes a veil? I don't know. I don't know. Any other people want to? Or have a response?
Oh, I could talk about this forever, so.
Okay, yeah. Well, go ahead, because you also reminded me of something.
I think that it's the process of when we when we do an action, at some point we're going to get a result from that action. And by becoming more aware of our actions, we take more control over that process. And so we can get rid of our suffering by realizing the actions that cause the suffering are causing the suffering, and it motivates us to do something else, something more positive, to create a result that is pleasant.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not good karma or bad karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect. That's my understanding.
Yeah. When I go back to like the presentation I shared and the veils, I was thinking about, are there times in all of our lives where like we identify with, I'm this and they're that, and, I'm gonna protect myself this way from them, and I have these feelings towards those people. And, those veils that at different points in our lives, maybe we all, to one degree or another, like, live our daily life by. So I know this is separate than maybe the karma talk, but when I first read the thing about the veils and was thinking about it, I feel like I'm seeing that today, just so many divisions and labels, and I'm with this group and you're with that group, and there really is no they're strong veils. It's like the veils are butting up against each other, which is causing more karma, right? More karmic effects. So the first jewel is about looking to the Buddha who, let go of all that and, purged himself of these negative afflictive emotions that result from there being a separation among us, and letting that kind of Buddha nature come through. So yeah, thank you. Hi.
Just to continue this discussion, I see, I hear what you're saying, because I think the Buddha and many other teachers have referred to nirvana or enlightenment in various ways as being unconditioned. And so that, for me, is stepping outside of karma, good or bad, beyond the normal law of cause and effect that we're all bound by in samsaric life. And so waking up is being truly, in my understanding, I haven't woken up, so this is based on what I've read, is being purely spontaneous, so that every response, every reaction is exactly what the moment calls for, and not conditioned by previous, causes. So I think that might, that's probably for me where even the so-called good karma is still being conditioned and therefore not nirvana.
Okay.
You're still beholden to your past experiences, not fully spontaneous, not fully, unique and adaptive to the present moment. If that makes any sense. So that's kind of, so it makes sense to me, the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Hi,
Hello.
Justin. Thank you. Excellent job. So I'll continue that even just a little further.
I thought you weren't available to give a talk today.
So, yes, I'm delinquent, but I have my son had brain surgery 2 weeks ago and is doing great, so I'm able to be here,
so
but
glad.
I had no idea I would
didn't
be
know
able to
that.
be here.
Well, I'm glad he's
so
doing well.
He's doing very well.
Great.
So a lot of what you said was kind of what was going through my mind too, because if you think about the realms of existence, right? How do you get to that God realm where things are excellent? Well, through good karma. If you're very, very generous in this life, in the next life, you may be very wealthy. But so much of the time, great wealth leads to great greed, leads to great attachment, which turns the cycle back again. You burn that good karma and then end up back in a place where, you're, and that's the cycle. That's the samsara that we're all stuck in. So I think when you talk about breaking down that veil between self and others, so there are great ways we counteract that attachment. One of them is we dedicate merit, right? We do a virtuous activity and then we dedicate the goodness that comes from that to all beings. And we make that a limitless, infinite type thing. So that's one way that we kind of can transform that virtue from turning into a kind of a a negative thing in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And the other I think of, Lama Kathy talks about this a lot. You know, when you see something excellent happen to someone else, you rejoice in their great benefit.
Yeah.
And it may not be happening to you, but that helps break down
jealousy.
that veil between ourselves and others when you rejoice in that. Similarly, when you see someone else perform a selfless act and a very virtuous act, then you dedicate their merit for everyone else too. So it kind of helps you to get out of the selfishness of I want good things for me, but you also rejoice in the good things that are happening to and by others.
Yeah.
And so that's another way that kind of karma can intersect with what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Breaking down the veils. The other thing I would mention is whenever I think about the 3 jewels and I think about taking refuge, I think about the fact that we take refuge all the time. We take refuge in our emotions. We take refuge in what we desire. We take
Pizza.
Refuge in entertainment,
Ice
in
cream.
food, yes. Whatever it is for us, we try to make ourselves happy with. And the big difference between the 3 jewels and the everything else that we take refuge in is that everything we're taking refuge in will let us down, right? Everything we're taking refuge in is impermanent. It will lead to disappointment in some way, whether it's someone else, our relationship, ourselves, our bodies, they're always
Not
changing.
having it anymore.
Right.
Because it's temporary.
Exactly. It's always temporary. And the teachings of the Buddha and enlightenment itself, Buddha nature, is our fundamental core nature. It's not impermanent. It's not changing. It will not let us down. It contains the teachings of how to escape the suffering of this world that does let us down continually.
Yeah.
So that's the fundamental core difference between the 3 jewels and why we take refuge in that, to kind of turn our minds from taking refuge in ourselves and everything that we think is going to get us to that happiness. And I always use if you look at 270 on a Monday morning, everybody on 270 on a Monday morning is looking for happiness, right? They're looking for what's going to help them. By going to that job, eventually, things are gonna pay off. I can, feed myself. I can feed my family. I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but we're all looking for what's going to help make us happy, what's going to relieve that suffering, and
it helps to be aware that everyone there is doing that.
Everyone is doing that.
Moved, so I wouldn't have to drive on 270.
Right.
And but it would help me on those mornings, because it was too early to be, like, get out of my way, or whatever.
It's hard to remember we're all
But
in
it
the
could
same
help
boat.
me remember, like, okay, they're anxious too. They're annoyed by the traffic too. They want to get there too. You reminded me just recently. I'll just share a quick other practice relating to this idea. It's if we're experiencing one of the afflictive emotions, we can say, let's say it's anger. May my anger contain the anger of all beings, and by my working through this moment of anger, may I be free from anger, but may all beings be free from anger. may we all achieve Buddhahood, the complete freedom from anger. And I was doing this recently, and I think I had a moment of thinking about, like, is this having any effect? And then for some reason, I pictured, like, other people doing that, and including me in, what they were going through. And I felt really good. And, I felt like, that is nice to think that other people would be wishing me to be working through something. But it's another example of kind of breaking down the us and them thing, and recognizing that, we all want to be happy, as you said. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so very much, Justin.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your attitude.
Thanks.
And also your teaching. Staying on 270 for a second,
Yeah.
I will, I'm learning to give happiness and the freedom from suffering and having the happiness to the other foolish driver.
Right. Yeah.
And it helps me.
Yeah.
And so maybe I drive a little calmer and it spreads. I also have a list that is growing about the SOBs, the cruel people, who I'm now, because of this, occasionally thinking that they are suffering too. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And, I wish them compassion and happiness.
Right.
So now...
Because if they stopped suffering, hopefully they would stop causing harm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Changing gears, the three poisons, attachment, repulsion, ignorance, I like to think about them as having three antidotes, rather, the positive view: letting go, accepting, and having clarity.
I like that.
As I understand, the Buddha said, even if I said it, you don't believe it until you've applied it and find that it's meeting your reason and common sense.
Yeah.
Therefore, I occasionally put words that I can understand, like the word goodness, to replace the word merit. Because, at any rate, I'm a simple person and I can't remember much, so I need a simple...
I'm the same.
And so I hope that I am free to use my words for concepts that are words that I don't otherwise understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I've heard Lama Kathy say something similar, as far as, like, I was told this, and I thought this might be another way to say it, So, yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring it back to the three jewels, and I mean, just as sort of a comment,
Yeah.
thinking about the metaphor of jewels and how precious and rare they are.
Yeah.
And, there's a Dharma teaching about precious human birth, and that it sort of includes, in terms of the jewels, how fortunate we are to be alive at a time when the Buddha lived and his teachings live on through the Dharma, and how fortunate we are to have a center that spreads that teaching and is a home for us. And, especially this center, living in the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio, and to be staring at a shrine like this is so incredibly rare. In my work as a board member for KTC, I've done a lot of research about what are other centers doing and what else is going on around the country. And for Columbus to have a place like this new building with this incredibly new shrine is just so precious.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's a jewel.
it is a jewel.
Yeah.
And going back a little bit to the discussion about karma, the way that I sort of think about it is, I think this is really good news because everyone in this room has incredibly good karma somewhere in the past that brought them to this moment in time. I don't know what it was, but I mean, I just, that's what I think about. It's like, it really is to be cherished, like a rare, precious jewel, but it's not a worldly jewel. It's a spiritual jewel that can, fulfill us and lead us on the path.
Yeah. No, that's really nice. Lama Kathy did add a note about that same point, just a small one here, about the preciousness. And she said that Tibetans call the three jewels Kon Chog Sam, or three rare and supreme ones. So she also wanted it to be pointed out, the preciousness and the rareness. So, yeah. Any of our students who, were attending to go to the intro class downstairs in the classroom, are there any questions on your mind? I know I'm experiencing a much larger forum than I'm used to and would normally talk to you with, and it's a little intimidating. So you may feel intimidated as well being in such a large room for the intro class, but would love to hear from you if you had any intro class questions. You can go ahead. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was a great Dharma talk.
I'm glad.
Yeah, a little bit of background about me. I used to live in Columbus, found the center, and to Michael's point, have just been so enamored by all of the offerings here. And I now live in a different city, so I'm just visiting this weekend.
I'm glad you can
And
make it.
I'm having this complexity in my head around my attachment to experience here and finding a new Sangha where I live in my other city. And so I was wondering if you could sort of talk about that or talk about your experience. It's very difficult for me to think about discernment and what aligns, right, to your point about the Dharma and receiving the Dharma and then interpreting it and contemplating it. And so I kind of distill that into discernment and how do I apply it and how do I think about it? And I've really been struggling in my new city to find somebody who teaches the Dharma, sort of similar to this Sangha. And so I was wondering if you could sort of maybe offer some pointers.
Well, one practical thing is since the pandemic, we've kept up our online presence. So that's one small solution, is you can stay connected with us each Sunday. I think all of the practices, starting with Tara at 8 a.m., are on Zoom. And obviously our Dharma talks and intro classes. So that could be something you look forward to each Sunday morning, where you are in your new city, is connecting at least virtually with us. I think a second point would be continuing your own study of whatever Dharma books you're reading. We do have teachers here who, through a mentorship program that you could get signed up for, and schedule interviews with them. So maybe you're reading on your own and you agree, I'll get through the first 3 chapters. And then you'll meet and have the chance to, at least over the phone or Zoom or whatever you guys decide, have a connection here. So that'd be a second thing I'd suggest. You know, the other, I guess the other thing that's coming to mind, well, I was gonna say like get involved in different clubs and activities in the city you're in, just to, maybe that isn't a Dharma community, but, you know, building community over whatever, like the local kickball league or,
Yeah.
and then who knows, maybe you'll meet someone on that team who also is studying on their own, and maybe you can, you know, start a group together. I went through a period where I was thinking about telling this story or not. I studied Buddhism on my own for a long time before ever coming here, just through reading. And I had a partner who studied Japanese Buddhism. And at our old center, which was the old church that was here, they had it was called a relic tour. And he wanted to go. And so I went with him. And that was my first time at the building. And Lama Kathy was giving blessings to anyone who wanted them, you know, with the relics. And so I got a blessing from her. And I remember thinking, like, she's just very bright and positive, and, you know, she's the neat person. But then I kind of just went back to my life, and, you know, that was that. You know, years later, the relationship ended, and I had a lot of close friends like move and leave the city. And so it was like a kind of a just starting over, even though I was in the same city. You know, I didn't move, but everything else moved, you know. And I don't know, part of my memory was like, maybe I'll go back to that center, you know, and see if there's a community there I could practice with, you know. And so that was years after, you know, I had come that one time. And I did, and had a great experience. And right after I started coming, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder, came to give a teaching, and I went to that. And anyway, I went through a similar thing of like starting over and needing something. And I think the biggest thing I learned from that experience was, you know, you have to make it happen.
Yeah.
You know, if you sit at home and I don't have a community, you know, I guess I'll stare at the wall at home again, you know, like, I mean, I would say that to myself, you know, like, okay, well, go somewhere, you know. And then that's been great, you know. But I did other things too, like, I think it was kickball, and I don't know, different groups. So who knows, because we have KTCs across the country, and we have little study groups that form. So I'd say watch our online stuff, maybe reach out about mentorship, keep doing your own study, you know, but then get out there in other communities, and, you know, maybe you'll meet people that you could start a group with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a follow-up question,
Yeah.
if that's all right. So you talked about your partner really interested in Zazen, which is a different flavor of Buddhism, right? And so my question is, right, like the city that I live in right now has other flavors of Buddhism that are practiced at, you know, I would say like, you know, a really authentic caliber.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I can participate in sort of those lineages and practices. And so I'm just thinking right now, like how I can balance, once again, going back to discernment, like how I can balance, you know, the core teachings that happen here versus like if I were to join a Zazen center. Not that one or the other is right or wrong, but, you know, like the manifestations of the Dharma are practiced very differently at sort of different sects of
Yeah.
Buddhism.
I mean, maybe you take pieces of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they have a meditation hour that you could go and do that part. I don't know. I think it's up to you and
Yeah.
what feels right to you. Whether it's having a community that maybe approaches things a little differently, but still in the same ballpark, or if that just doesn't work with what you want, I'm not sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you.
Best wishes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One quick thing to add.
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
You mentioned it too. Look for lineage. No matter what lineage, no matter what group you find, this is something I maybe didn't appreciate at first and wouldn't have known a long time ago, but a group that's plugged into, a lineage that goes back and back and back is just going to have a lot stronger foundation and a lot more backing to the teachings, if that makes sense. And so when you were talking about discernment, the fact that I get up here and teach and that Justin gets up here and teaches, we know that what we're teaching came from someone and it came from someone, and it goes back and back in that lineage. It came from enlightened beings because we're teaching in that lineage. We're teaching teachings that helped them become Buddhas, and that's gives us confidence, because otherwise, if I were up there just saying my own words every time, we could get wildly off track, right? So that's the other thing I would say is examine the lineage of any community that you work with. So.
Thank you. Well, I made a mistake, but I think it's actually going to work out. I took the time with Dawn helped me to get all the prayer sheets out, and then I just didn't do it because I was nervous and ready to get started. But I think this actually works. So I would like to, I know we're closing, but I'd like to do the refuge and then the dedication of merit. And it dovetails with what we're talking about, because as you'll see, the refuge prayer and the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, which is the Sangha. So it is the three jewels. So maybe we can picture this as, we're taking refuge at the beginning of the rest of our day, okay? And then we'll turn around and do the dedication of merit for our session today too. So if you have this, why don't we read the refuge prayer. We can do just one time through in English together. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Okay. And then we've had this wonderful session together and discussion and sharing. And so that was our aspiration that we were supposed to begin with, but we'll have it be our aspiration for the rest of our day. And then now at the close of our session, we'll dedicate the merit of having shared this time and space together. So we'll do both stanzas just in English once. So, by this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samatha Bhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. All right, well, thank you so much. I was very nervous to give an intro class talk in the shrine room, but I appreciate your participation and just wish you all the best. So thank you.